Xilonen is gonna boost your team to the next level, and today I'm gonna show you how to build her best. Whether you are wondering about playstyle, artifacts, weapons, or what team comps work best for her, I've got you covered. My name is Genshin Impact, let's get started. Looking at Xylonen's talents, the thing that pops into your eyes is that she's one of the few characters that has something other than attack scaling in her normal attacks. In fact, you find defense there, which is something not even Noelle or E to have, as they convert defense to attack with their burst. Xilonen has a regular 3-hit combo, which by itself is not very interesting. A plunge though scales on defense, which makes her viable with Xianyun if you plan on playing Xilonen as main DPS. Then there's a 4-hit blade roller combo which scales solely on defense and comes into play when you use her skill. That skill, called Johor's Scratch, is Xylonen's most important ability. It is important to understand it fully in order to choose the right teams for her, as some will not be able to take advantage of her buffs. Once she triggers the skill, she enters the Night Soul Blessing state. That state comes with a fuel that depletes over time, and you get 45 Night Soul points, which are the state fuel. Now the skill has 3 different components to it. The first part is that it makes her put on her pair of rollerblades and makes her dash forward and deal geo damage to whoever she crashes into. The second part is her source samples. It's what makes this unit so busted out of the gate, as it is tied to a resistance shred she provides to her team. You get at the start 3 samples. They start as Geo 2, but when you put members in your team who are Cryo, Pyro, Hydro or Electro, the samples will change to that corresponding element. Xilonen also has a sample of her own which will always be Geo, and that is the only one which will always be active, meaning she always has a Geo shred for herself. But for the other members, the resistance shred has an activation process which you have to go through. Now here comes the interesting part. In order to activate the samples and with that the shred, Xilonen needs to ramp up her Night Soul points to the max. This makes her consume all points, which in return gives the buffs to her team. But this doesn't happen on its own. The 45 points you get from using her skill are just not enough. That's where her A1 passive comes into play. If you have 2 source samples, which are not Geo, she will gain 35 Night Soul points when doing normal or plunging attacks. Means you cast a burst, do her skill, 2 normals, and boom, you get the team resistance shred and can swap her out. With less than 2 other elements, you will get a 30% damage buff to Xilonen, normal and charge attacks instead. Now you might see the problem here. If you're interested in playing any mono Geo outside of herself, you will be out of luck at C0. You have to get her C2 to unlock that particular team. It sucks, but it is what it is. Another huge part of her skill is exploration. The blades she put on significantly enhance her movement speed, kinda similar to Yelan's skill but on steroids, even allowing her to vertically traverse terrain and do super leaps, allowing her to do all sorts of acrobatics. In contrast to Yelan's skill, you also do not get stuck on small obstacles as easily. In this state, you continuously consume Night Soul points, and sprints or jumps the wall up will consume more stamina. After 9 seconds, the points will automatically expire no matter what. If you are in Natlan though, her bonus passive will now kick in and allow you to continue your lethal drive-bys by consuming your Phlogiston points instead of your Night Soul points. So in Natlan, you can drive much further. Now with the skill, the complicated part of her kit is out of the way. The burst is a lot simpler but definitely very important to Xilonen, no matter if you play her as support or as a DPS. It does some AoE damage on cast, and depending if you got 2 samples that are not Geo, you get different effects. If you got 2 samples at least, a burst will switch to support mode and heal the active character periodically. Not the best for arena fanfare collector, but it is there, and it is enough to keep your team alive. With fewer than 2 samples, you get 2 extra damage procs instead of the heal, which deals a hefty 500% plus multiplier at level 10, of course from your defense. So definitely a huge chunk of her damage, but it also means you need an additional sustain in your team. We haven't talked about her A4. That one does 2 different things. If Xylonen maxes out her Night Soul points during her skill, she will trigger a Night Soul burst, which will give her extra energy when she uses the Hero Cinder set. If other characters trigger a Night Soul burst, she will get a 20% defense buff. So it is a good idea to have another character go in before her, so she can get that bonus. Another Natlan bonus is that using a Night Soul transmission will restore 15 Phlogistons. With her abilities now in place, you can see now if you want to play her as DPS. You have to play her Mono Geo, and the moment there are more than 2 different other elements, she will automatically swap into the support role. So basically Xylonen is a 2-in-1 deal. Now with that being said, we can now go into her builds and see how to get the most out of her. Xylonen's artifact setup is straightforward. You get 2 routes depending if you play her support or as a main DPS. For support you really only got 2 options here. The obvious choice is the Hero of Cinder City set. The 2-piece bonus gives Xylonen a 6 flat energy whenever a Night Soul burst triggers, and because of her A4, which counts separately, you will be getting this effect at least twice per rotation. Then there is the 4-piece bonus, which gives her a massive 40% damage bonus to the 2 elements she reacts with. You will always get Geo, but it can also apply to Pyro, Hydro, Cryo, Electro depending on your team. But hey, if you don't have Cinder set yet, no worries. Archaic Petra is here to save the day. It only gives a 35% damage bonus and requires Xylonen to grab the crystal to activate it. Plus, it doesn't work for Geo, but it's there, it's an alternative. Now if you play her DPS, the Obsidian Codex is now the number 1 for her, with a substantial margin. But if you own a very good Husk set, you can rock that in the meantime. But if you're really dedicated to Xylonen, you still want to farm for the Obsidian Codex in the long run. As for the main stats, here's what you should go for. Energy recharge is the main thing. Xylonen's buffs aren't stat dependent, so you want to make bursting easier. For the goblet, you go Geo damage or defense percent. If you are aiming for stronger heals, go with defense percent. If you're leaning into damage, go with Geo damage. For the circuit, you have now 3 different options: crit percent, defense percent, or healing percent. Again, crit percent is for maximizing damage, healing percent is for improving her overall healing capabilities, and defense pairs well with her signature weapon. For substats, prioritize energy recharge over defense over crit. Crit is, like said, the min-maxer choice, but everyone else is just fine without it. Now let's talk weapons. If you play Xylonen in her support role, you have only a few good choices. The best one being of course her signature weapon, Peak Patrol's Song. This one's great no matter if you play her as a support or DPS. It gives her a ton of defense percent, which helps her with healing and damage, and also boosts damage percent for her DPS. Fully stacked, it also provides the entire team with a 25.6% damage bonus based on her defense. You will need around 3200 defense on her to max out the buff. Another option is Freedom's Thorn. Sure, the EM stat is kinda useless, but it's capable of boosting your team with attack percent if Xylonen triggers 2 reactions while she's on the field, which works in some teams and in some not at all. As for 4-star weapons, your best options are the Flute of Eptzitsal, I don't know, I'm butchering it probably, the Cinnabar Spindle and the Favonius Sword. But usually you rarely will need that extra defense from the Cinnabar as her healing is plenty, so Favonius is the best and most accessible option. As for her damage options, Rank 2 at 92% of her signature's power level is the Harbinger of Dawn. As a defense scaler, the attack stat on any weapon is useless on her, so it only comes down to the passive. And here the Harbinger just provides high value crit stats. Her damage is also split between all her abilities, so a Cinnabar spindle ranks very low despite the defense it provides. As you are going to play her in Mono Geo in her DPS role, Zhongli is going to be almost mandatory, as you need to protect her as much as possible from taking damage. The next best high ranking options you have available are the Uraku Misugiri, Holia Incision and the Haran Geppaku Futsu, but why when you can just play the Harbinger and be done? Xylonen is versatile and she can slot into a lot of different teams. I will go over some of the archetypes she works best in. Starting with Geo DPS teams. Xylonen is the first good Geo buffer we've had in a long time, and that makes her an amazing pick for Navia. Unfortunately, out of the entire Geo roster, it's only her worth mentioning who benefits significantly from her presence. The problem with Arataki E2 and Noelle is that she won't be able to provide her resistance threat to them at C0, which I explained in more detail in her talents. You will need C2, so therefore she would be only a Cinder City holder and a heal bot. Navia though doesn't have that problem, as you run this team with Bennett and Furina, allowing her to take full advantage. If you run Xilonen herself as a DPS, you can put her to work in Mono Geo or Plunge, with Mono Geo meaning to put her with Goro, Zhongli and a flex slot. But Plunge is better where you can run her with Furina, Kachina and Xianyun, which is funny as that composition doesn't even allow her to use all her innate damage buffs. It's actually pretty cool though that DPS Xilonen is not even close to being a meme team. It is not going to dethrone the likes of Nuvillet or Alekino, but it deals very respectable 1.7 million damage per rotation and is almost on par with Raiden Double Hydro. Then there are Brute Force Hyper Carries. Since Xilonen is Geo, she can potentially mess with reactions, but Brute Force DPS like Nuvillet don't care about that at all. In fact, this guy is the biggest beneficiary from having Xilonen in his team. She can heal for his fanfare and boost his overall damage with a whole arsenal of buffs and debuffs. The top team is the Dragon himself, Furina, Xilonen and Kazuha. Despite the chance of Xilonen technically stealing some reactions, she can be used in some vaporized teams due to her low on-field time. It makes the setups more elaborate, but it works. She fits with pyro carries like Lin and Alekino, who don't really use Kazuha's burst and therefore don't need that extra hydro application. Thanks to Xylonen's higher buff uptime, rotations are also more flexible. But while she is good, she is not a massive upgrade to them. It's like some plus quality of life that she adds to these carries. Moalani can also use Xilonen without feeling awkward about needing extra hydro. My favorite comp is Moalani, Xilonen, Xiangling and a flex, which usually will be canvas for the hydro resonance. Double hydro. Alright, I know some of you were wondering what about Hu Tao. In a double hydro comp, people usually throw in Jean or Xianyun for healing and resistance shred, but Xilonen is a viable alternative. She's got the Geo shred, damage buffs and trades in the healing for a bit more damage. So yeah, totally worth it for Hu Tao. Now let's touch on her C1 versus her signature weapon, Peak Patrol Song. C1 reduces her Night Soul and Phlogiston consumption when out of combat, which makes exploration smoother. It also gives the team interruption resistance when her E's source samples activate. It's a nice quality of life improvement, but in most cases I would still recommend investing in her weapon first. Now let's cover the rest of her Eidolons. With her C2, when Xylonen's E is active, she buffs party members based on their element. For Geo it's a 50% damage bonus, Pyro gets 45% attack, Hydro gets 45% HP and Cryo gets 60% crit damage. And Electro gets reduced burst cooldown and energy. The Geo and Hydro buffs are here the most impactful. The C3 levels up her skill, giving her an extra 9% resistance shred. Pretty solid. The C4 buffs normal charge and plunging attacks based on 65% of her defense up to 6 times. Honestly, it's a bit low, so not really her strongest constellation. The C5 levels up her burst, not really necessary. And the C6, when in her skill mode, Xylonen gains a special effect that pauses her timer. Boosts her normal and plunging attack damage based on 300% of her defense and heals the team periodically. It's a strong constellation, but very situational. You're better off getting her earlier constellations or investing into another character. Xilonen is a very versatile, powerful and easy to gear unit. She can boost a lot of teams or can even rock the field as a main DPS. Great style, amazing design, very powerful, 10 out of 10 would buy again. If you enjoyed this guide, make sure to hit the like button and let me know in the comments what teams you like most with her. This has been your Star Impact, signing out.